Happy Halloween, everyone! As usual, this is Matt. Welcome to the first review style video in my channel, but it's really more of a backdrop for me to talk about WADs and mods I like playing in October. This is actually my first time embracing the Halloween spirit in fall, but I think I picked a solid lineup of mods, plus a few WADs to get through them, and you might not know about them if you're not a regular viewer of my channel. This video is structured in chapters, so here's a list of what you're going to see today. Pause if you'd like to read it, or if you want to skip to a particular section or chapter, feel free to use the timestamps either in the description of the video or in your player. And of course, if you're worried about what source part you need to use for these, I'll list them below the mods or WAD's name really as we go along. Now let's get to it. So, there are a few ways to make Doom look scarier, but the one crucial way that comes to mind for me is dimming the lights. For this, we'll be using DarkDoomZ, which is essentially a Z-script powered refinement of an older mod called DarkDoom. It's a simple mod. You get a few different modes which will lower the brightness value of almost every sector in the map. In other words, it makes Doom dark, just as its name implies. You can make it as dark or as bright as you like, but some of these are borderline pitch black, so use some of these levels at your own discretion. You can add a lot of mood to your map by simply making it a little darker, or if you don't mind using dynamic lighting, you can make it even darker and rely on a flashlight instead. DarkDoomZ does come with a built-in flashlight, but I'm not the biggest fan of it since I've been using another flashlight mod for a long time now. This mod is Flashlight++. It's a perfect companion to DarkDoomZ as you can configure the flashlight however you like, and it even lets you make some wild combinations if you want to. It also comes with a pretty comprehensive list of preset lights for you to choose. These include conventional flashlights, a weak mining headlight, a lamp, and just so bright. I don't know why you'd use the last one, but hey, no judging. Moving to the audio side of things, Live Reverb is a fantastic yet very simple mod. All it does here is dynamically apply reverb to in-game sounds, scaling the effect depending on the size of the room you're in. Nifty stuff. It's very much a good pick for those who like BSX Doom or Doom 64. Unfortunately, this one doesn't work correctly in Else Doom for reasons beyond my understanding. Dr. Kazabai's live Ambience script is yet another simple mod. You might be sensing a pattern here. It will randomly play spooky sounds, adding a bit more depth to the game's world while occasionally spawning static generator sounds. All these contribute to you not feeling alone on the map, even when everything is already dead and you're just looking around for secrets. I don't know about you, but I really like playing Doom when it's raining. For that added bit of atmosphere, there are two mods which do the same thing but with plenty of differences between them. The first of these is Universal Rain and Snow. It does what it says on the tin. It's a universal mod with 4 weather types: rain, snow, ash, and blood rain. And escalating intensities for them as well. Simply select one of the weathers, set the intensity, and enjoy. Rain Remixed++ does more or less the same thing as the first mod, but with the added difference of its effects being considerably more dynamic. You can even have a ground shake, likely to simulate a particularly strong lightning strike, or maybe an earthquake. I don't really know why it's here, but it's an option. It even lets you pick different colors for the rain droplets and randomize what kind of weather you get. It's my favorite of the two for just how nice and comfy it feels. The snow and ash presets here also will move around as though wind was blowing them all over the place, which is just cool to see in motion. And to close things out, I'll briefly talk about Immerse. This basically replaces the standard movement of GZDoom with something that feels more realistic and also adds footstep sounds whenever you walk. Since not all mods have this feature, it's nice to keep it handy. It also lets you lean around corners if you want a slightly more tactical experience. In short, it's a nice little mod you can load for some extra immersion, just as the name implies. Use to Pickup is another neat little add-on that you can toggle on and off as needed, in case you want to pick up everything by hand or you just want to make sure you're not missing any items in the room. It's a good fit and it adds to the feel of survival horror when you do use it. Belatedly, I feared I should also talk about 10.5x. As we all know, a good chunk of the difficulty in Doom comes from how many monsters you face during the maps. And if you want something spooky, maybe having so many of them in a map isn't a great idea. 10.5x lets you control how many monsters will actually spawn on the map, at the cost of removing unwanted monsters by simply having them die the moment they are alerted of your presence. This isn't immersive at all, so my best suggestion is to load this only if you want to get through something like Sunder or some other slaughter WOD with a slower paced mod. Otherwise, you'll just have to pick your WODs responsibly. Doom spell is fine, but a simple palette change can do wonders for the game. Let's start with the Doom 64 palette. There's already a pretty big change, as you can see. It's not perfect and there are some oddities due to how these colors are translated into the new palette, but you can just overlook these if you prefer. Astral Fiend's Dark Haze is possibly a better choice. It makes things darker without being overbearingly difficult to tell if you're bumping into a health bonus or a nip. DIR's OPal is an interesting one. It brings out a lot of nuances while also desaturating the colors, so it's a great fit for WODs with a more Silent Hill-ish vibe. I think it looks a little bit too warm for my taste, but you can't go wrong with it. As for textures, I have a few of those lined up too. I don't really use these often, but who knows, maybe you want to go the extra mile. An obvious one would be the Doom 3 for Doom 2 textures made by Codename. Do mind this one is only for GZDoom or LZDoom, as it uses a PK3 format and PNG textures. Other parts don't run either of these. Codename has also made a Doom 64 themed reskin for regular Doom. This is more comprehensive and changes every asset for its Doom 64 counterpart or something resembling Doom 64 style, which means textures, sprites, and sounds. This is actually based on one of the WODs I will talk about later, so it should run on just about every source port out there. I was going to add more to this particular part of the list, but as it turns out the majority of texture packs seem to be geared towards GZDoom or add extra features which, while undoubtedly cool, are unnecessary or would slow down performance. The whole idea of this section was to give folks who have weaker hardware options, so I think I'll have to cut it short here. Sorry for that. To me, horror is synonymous with a droning ambient track playing in the background. No loud guitars or drums, just the quiet, creeping sounds of a song that is mostly indifferent to you. Since the section is mostly audio-based and I don't want to play possibly copyrighted music, I'll just quickly go over some of them. First and foremost, the Manhunt Idle/Ambient soundtrack. Perfect for maps with the slightest suggestion of urban decay, industry, or are just inhabited by things that dwell in the dark. The high-quality PSX Doom soundtrack needs no further elaboration, it's what you would expect from PSX Doom. Lots of great spooky tracks here, all courtesy of Aubrey Hodges. The alternate Dark Ambient music max is also a solid choice. This one comes in two distinct volumes, with Volume 1 being better tailored to industrial, tech-based type maps, and Volume 2 being a great fit for hellish, mystical maps. The Doom Ambient pack was actually how I played Doom for the longest time. I didn't really like MIDI music much until around 2022, so this compilation of looping Doom 3 background noise with the occasional intermission of Quake music is very near and dear to me. It should have said that all of these would work perfectly in any part that has support for MP3 sound files, so you know, the vast majority of them. Now, on to the gameplay mods. Nightmare Logic is a series of mods by Dr. Codename that have one thing in common: providing as much gameplay as possible with the smallest file size. Currently, we're on to Nightmare Logic 3, but I'll be focusing on the first installment because to me, it has a fairly understated but noticeable horror feel to it. It's tiny and easy to miss, but you know, it's there. Nightmare Logic 4 is just around the corner too, so you can look forward to it if blasting horrors from hell with World War I weapons sounds like a fun time to you. The idea here is simple: you don't carry a lot of ammo and now your guns reload. It's important to state that Nightmare Logic 1 doesn't have a difficulty select screen, so it's always locked to UV, which means you're always going to face the maximum number of monsters in a map. You also have a quick grenade for dealing out immediate damage, as well as a berserk-like item you can carry with you to make you run all over the place. The default arsenal hits plenty hard already. The battle rifle and pistol will likely remain as your workhorse weapons for most of the game, but this mod also features an upgrade system. You can find these weapons safe spawning on berserk spawns sometimes. Hitting using them will upgrade weapons in a set pattern or give those weapons in case you don't have them yet. The shotgun in particular replaces the rocket launcher for a reason. It's a beast of a gun, it will be your go-to for dealing with tougher monsters. Should you want a little more firepower, Nightmare Logic also has an extra weapon bag. It adds a Kalashnikov rifle with a faster fire rate and larger mag as a companion to the battle rifle, an M60 and a recoilless rifle. The recoilless rifle in particular is a ton of fun to use, just mind the distance. Now, I didn't mention this in the music pack section simply because I wanted to keep it contained here, but Nightmare Logic 1 has its own music pack too. I made it a long time ago when for some reason I went a tiny bit crazy and made 40 different songs over the course of a few months. This is a jukebox style music pack, so you have some control over what song plays at any given moment. I think I add a good bit of variety to the mod personally. Doom has always been kind of a budget game if you think about it. I mean that in the sense it's going to provide folks who aren't well off a whole bunch of entertainment without requiring them to fork out money for expensive machines. Now, you know what other kind of budget game is perfect for this? RPG Maker games. You know the ones: Corpse Party, Mad Father, Paranoiac, Oni, the works. I don't know how much those vibes inspired Lost for Words when he was making Red Sparrow 93, but there's clearly some overlap there. You play as a Japanese schoolgirl who got stuck in whatever housekeep you chose to play this mod with, down to your starting weapon being the training sword, and depending on the difficulty you play in, it can take a while for you to even find a pistol. The gameplay here is still within the confines of a typical shooter, but things here are usually slower paced and less focused on killing a lot of demons. The fact your plasma rifle replacement is a lighter and a spray bottle, which are two separate items, should tell you enough. It's important to say reloading here is mag based. If you shoot once and reload, the bullets remaining in the mag are gone. The shotgun is the lone exception to the rule, as you reload it shell by shell. There are also a few other quirks, such as ditching the training sword for a proper katana later, as well as coming across these strange masks which let you claw the hell out of whatever's in your way for a short while. In short, it's a unique take on a slow, horror adjacent mod for Doom, and certainly one of the coolest ones I've played this year. Shut Up and Bleed needs no introduction. It's one of the best horror mods I've ever played for a simple reason: it's easy to learn but hard to master. This is due to a few small but fundamental shakeups to gameplay, chief of which being the fact every single monster in the map starts wandering and will remain like that until it spots you. Once you're spotted, the monster will then chase you like usual. Trying to describe Shut Up and Bleed is a little tricky because I'm quite used to it by now, but the gist of it is it initially plays a little like Resident Evil, as you're trying your best not to be overwhelmed or run out of ammo, but after a while you're going to find a wealth of guns and supplies. It's still going to be dangerous, of course, given even basic monsters are bound to kill you. The weapons are all satisfying and easy to use, which is the reason I quite like Shut Up and Bleed. All weapons have a simple kick on fire to push monsters away, and you can also sprint to run away from bad situations, which is probably for the best given how often you find yourself surrounded. As said earlier, combat here will tend towards being something very dynamic and quite frantic on occasion. That said, I should mention this mod wasn't quite developed all the way for whatever reason. If you play it, you won't run into any big issues and certainly no crashes to desktop. Captain J has made a small add-on consisting of mostly fixes and some minor quality of life improvements, but Potato Bloke also went ahead and made one that adds a few more things. Namely, you get to see how many grenades you have, and healing sprays will be inventory items you can use whenever you want. On the topic of patches, Potato Bloke also made quite a few weapon add-ons. You don't need to use these, but if you do want to have an M60 or M202 flash in this mod, it's certainly an option. What matters is it's a ton of fun, and since it's compatible with GZDoom 3.0, I think co-op with friends is possible to some degree. I haven't had the chance to test it myself yet, but the idea is certainly cool. Play this one if you want a fun but relatively punishing experience. In fact, if you do, make sure you knock the difficulty down to medium and read what each difficulty does just in case. This mod has quite a few of those after all. I suggest playing this in wide awake until you get the hang of it, as ammo will be relatively plentiful and monsters will be relatively numerous, but not particularly tougher. Harder event is a neat little curiosity. A small mod made by Turnus S13 of Demon Steel and High Noon Drifter fame. Likely made for a multiplayer event that took place a few years ago. I think. I don't remember the story, but it's one of those mods that if you know, you know. It isn't hidden so much as kind of forgotten over the years. This is a very simple mod. In fact, let me go ahead and tell you not to run any other mods of this one for a very simple reason. This one comes back with its own bestiary just like Shut Up and Bleed, but it also removes the music, darkens the whole map, and introduces its own rain system. This means it's best experienced as is with one slight exception. Earlier this year, Lost Warriors made a simple patch to add a reload animation to the grenade launcher and update the strike for slot 6 and 7 weapons. That's about it really. It doesn't make any huge changes to how the guns work, but it'll just make sure things look a little bit nicer. With that out of the way, harder events monsters are really interesting. They're all ghostly takes on Doom's bestiary for the most part, with a few exceptions, and all the zombies make cool radio noises. I don't know why, but it's an inspired touch. The Ember placement is quite incredible, and so is the demons. Keep your eyes peeled when finding them, because they like teleporting around. There is no real outfires here, but that's because the outfire for all weapons is a nice flashlight, which is pretty essential given how dark the game becomes. Your melee weapons do hit pretty hard, but I think for this one it's better to just keep your distance if possible. Before I move on, I'd like to stress this mod was made to be a co-op experience too. This means you can definitely play it with your friends through GZDoom, which is bound to be a lot of fun when you get enough folks to be scared together. So, I presented a few gameplay mods that feature their own bestiary for you to fight. What if you're running a mod that has no custom monsters? You can rely on monster packs for that, and the first one I'll talk about is Project Malice. If you've been around the modding scene over the last few years, chances are you're familiar with this very cool monster pack. It aims to provide a darker, less scrutiny, and much more varied set of monsters you fight. And most of them are smarter too. This mod even has a rudimentary stealth system built into it, which I personally never quite noticed at play, but is sure to be useful when you're skulking around in the dark. The monsters here have rather complex behaviors too. For example, some zombie shotgunners will launch smoke grenades to conceal their position. Most zombies will reload their weapons. Some of the pinky replacements may try shooting or charging at you. Some monsters will hide within corpses and pop out when you approach. I think that's what they do at least, and that's just what I've personally seen. They also don't stand still in one place, which makes them feel quite dynamic, and no monsters use hit scan attacks either, so you can dodge gunfire quite easily if you know where it's coming from. Project Malice also introduces new fodder monsters. These are all very weak, nuisance type monsters which you can see wandering around the maps. Most are simply melee only zombies, but you can also fight off rats, fly swarms, and trites. I should also mention you'll occasionally stumble across some monsters I liken to random encounters. I don't fully understand what makes them spawn, but I can simply tell you these are some of the scariest monsters you'll find on this mod. I've seen a glitched out marine, or weird white things that no clips around, and there is one which is a thing that possesses one of the fodder zombies and is a nightmare to fight. Just keep your eyes open for them and you'll be fine. As far as variety goes, you really can't do better than this. Most of the familiar monsters have many new variants which can completely change how you play, even maps you're familiar with. The fodder monsters and occasional decorative item is also just going to make this mod that much more fun. It should be said not all corpses are dead either. Some of them might actually be pretending. Moving on to something less likely to give you an anxiety attack, Legion of Bones isn't really meant to scare you and keep you looking over your shoulder. I think this is more of a fun Halloween mod, as most monsters have been changed into faster, more aggressive skeletal or ghostly versions of themselves. It's a simple change, but nothing is spookier than skeletons. Most of the monsters here have the same health, but have some quirks to spice things up. Imps are faster and can spam fireballs like it's no one's business. Pinkies randomly pick between walking and running. Archvowels have a whopping 4 different attacks. Revenants come back after dying, and Spider Masterminds go from laughable attempts at bosses to legitimately scary monsters to fight. But on top of that, Legion of Bones replaces the usual nightmare difficulty with its own new difficulty, Double Death. The idea is simple. The monsters start off as their usual vanilla self, but after 10 seconds of dying, they will come back as their skeletal counterparts. I don't play on this difficulty myself, to be perfectly honest, as I prefer to see the new monsters immediately, but it's still a neat option for folks looking for something more. I don't really have much to add to this one. It's a lot of fun and it's certainly a good pick, regardless if you're going to dodge a circus on the side of the road, or some long forgotten tomb in the desert or jungle. Some of you may remember Resident Evil, codename HUNK, a total conversion made by the Marrow that's made to resemble Resident Evil down to playing in third person. Well, as it turns out, its monsters can make for a pretty cool experience outside of that PC. This mod only has monsters that must get close to you in order to attack, so you might brush it off as not being fun, since the zombies that now replace the vast majority of Doom's bestiary are slow, take their time in getting to you, and aren't particularly tricky to deal with. But then you realize something. No monster here will drop ammo for you. This significantly changes how you approach fights, and you will, sooner or later, have to run away from the horde you woke up 5 seconds to the map because you didn't have enough ammo. There are other monsters here too. You can find lickers, zombie dogs, hunter alphas, tyrants, and even Mr. X himself. All of these move faster than the average zombie too, but you thankfully will be able to know when they're around. All the monsters here have unique footstep sounds, making it easy to tell where they are at all times, and now stirring up the tension when you hear something rushing at you in the darkness. Overall, this is a perfect monster pack you don't mind being pitted against melee-only foes. I think running Haze Destructor with this actually makes the gameplay quite interesting, as you go from the usual suffering Haze Destructor offers to a genuinely compelling, slow-paced, survival-focused experience. There are no more bullets whizzing past your head, but you still need to worry about carrying too much weight, dropping from great heights, and patching yourself up when you inevitably get hit by something. This might just be my favorite monster pack of all time. I'm kind of shoehorning it here, yes, but the variety and subtle improvements to the base Doom monsters are very welcome. I'm mostly bringing up DRLA Monsters because of the sheer variety, as the monsters here come in 4 different flavors. Normal, Nightmare, Technophobia, and Armageddon. Even the normal monsters can get pretty spooky, but here they are mostly to fill out the roster as the most common monsters to spawn. Technophobia monsters are also interesting, featuring more heavily augmented monsters as the name implies. Nightmare and Armageddon, however, are where things get real. Nightmare has replacements for every single vanilla monster, which are considerably harder to deal with, as former humans pack more firepower, imps are invisible when you're not looking at them and wander around upon spawning, revenants can launch their projectiles become faster the longer they're in the air. Yeah, you get the idea, these monsters don't mess around. The boss monsters are also fittingly a nightmare until you get the hang of them, and even then, they remain very much lethal no matter how much practice you have under your belt. Armageddon, also thankfully, doesn't have replacements for everything. You're still going up against some of the harder monsters I fought in Doom, such as hard-hitting revenants that can randomly use a drone to teleport to your vicinity, zombies with super shotguns that lie in wait around the corner, small fleshy things that can devour your health in under 2 seconds, and other such unpleasant beasts. The bosses are better left unknown. You're going to have fun when you find one. So, should you play this in the Nightmare or Armageddon skills only? The answer is you probably shouldn't. Running this in its standard difficulty will sprinkle in some of the harder monsters, which you combine with the right mod will make gameplay fresh and not too difficult, just enough to enhance the experience. This is more of a universal monster pack, but since I like it and I couldn't find any other monster pack that has spooky stuff and I spent a while with, it's going here. It's great all around, so it should be great for spooky times too. Ironically, I'm opening up the WOD section with a mega WOD you really shouldn't use any mods with. Mortem might very well be not only the best Halloween mod for Doom out there, but also one of the very best WODs I've ever had the fortune of playing. Let's really get the technical stuff out of the way. This is a 2021 MBF21 compatible mega WOD that extensively uses these standards features, so you'll need GZDoom or a similar port such as NuggetDoom or Wolf if you want to experience it to the fullest. This means you should definitely play with Freelook turned off and the software renderer turned on. Given this WOD is long, I recommend anyone doing a blind run of this to do so on Buckle Up Bunhead. Trust me, some of these maps will test your skill if you choose to engage them directly. You can play Mortem in more recent versions of GZDoom, of course, but I think that takes away some of the charm, and I'm not sure if something could break as Mortem relies on mapping tricks GZ might not play nice with. Regardless, you have the information. Do with it what you will. This is a community effort by members of 4chan's Retro Video Games Board. Let me tell you, those folks are really skilled. There's at least 7 hours of entertainment here, exploring all sorts of themes and gameplay styles. You can expect to see adventure maps, run and gun maps, slaughter, legitimately scary dungeon crawls, and of course, plenty of spooky skeletons, as well as quite a few new additions to the bestiary, which wound up lasting for the whole of October with not much variety going on. That said, I played Mortem's Phase 2 update, and on the 31st of October, Phase 3 was released to the public through Doom Road, with more maps, a slightly rearranged map order, and very tasty sprites for the fist and plasma gun. So, as due diligence, I must say that while Phase 3 contains 34 maps, it's likely Phase 4 will add more. Given this update has a non-zero chance of happening right after this video goes up, I'm not going to focus on specifics, but rather give you a quick guided tour on what Mortem is all about. This is a Halloween WOD through and through, to the point one of the first new monsters you meet is called Skeleton and is a weaker revenant who throws bones at you from afar, punches you up close, and goes up in a rain of bones if you manage to trigger its extreme death state. Yeah, they weren't messing around when they made this, it's the spookiest WOD I've ever seen. The visuals here are simply stunning. The new palette is wonderfully calibrated to allow for all sorts of vibrant colors you just don't see that often in Doom. Oranges, purples, and greens often take center stage, while the other colors seem to have been desaturated slightly to give things a slightly moodier look. Beyond that, you'll have a new arsenal to play with. I think the only real big changes here are the fist, chainsaw, SMG, and rocket launcher, which aside from sporting lovely new sprites and smooth animations, are a little bit faster, or in the case of the rocket launcher, hit a little bit harder. But this all goes to show you can do a lot without really changing Doom and its core. Of course, Ambient 21 is used to its fullest effect. This means that aside from a plethora of new additions to the Doom roster, you can also expect to come across new decorations, some of which can react to your presence, and ambient sounds that fully sink you into Admortem's demented, wonderful world. I won't lie, some maps here actually get under my skin, both in terms of difficulty and sheer horror, but I'd say Admortem skews more towards being a funny haunted house ride. Scary at points, but mostly entertaining. Up until now, I've only shown footage of Admortem's first map, but here are some beauty shots from this Megawad's wide array of themes. I'm not kidding when I say it might just be one of the best Megawads I've ever played, folks. While this is a community effort and continuity isn't something it's particularly concerned with, it still feels like you're making decent progress from map to map, going from small houses in the woods and its script to strange realm mortals were never meant to tell the tales of. It's the kind of WoD where a secret might stab you with rockets and legs in one moment and make you kill 1,000 demons in the next, then take it for a quiet, lonely walk to the next stage. And somehow, it does this consistently for its whole runtime. You don't mind that you're getting blindsided because you're too busy wanting to see what's next, what weird little place you might just find around the corner. In that way, Admortem is both trick and treat. I can recommend it enough. It's a fantastic way to either build up to Halloween or simply enjoy what little is left of it. Nothing's stopping you from taking this into November either, because as we all know, that month's just Spooktober too. On the polar side of the non-GZDoom wonders provided by Admortem, we have Unloved. This one is actually relatively similar to Admortem in skill level, though I must caution you, I've never fully delved into it because I remembered it existed as I was writing this script. This is a 5-episode map for GZDoom, released in 2009 and worked into completion by 2010. Yes, it's quite old by WoD standards, but that doesn't make it any less gruesome and gritty. Unloved rather infamously gets quite slaughterish eventually, so adjust your expectations accordingly. If partaking in the mass butchery of these monsters doesn't sound like a fun time to you, it might just not be your cup of tea. One important note, you can play Unloved with mods. You just gotta open it up in Slate, go to the unlovedstuff.wad file, open it, and delete the keyconf lump. I don't know what the hell this accursed thing does, but if you don't delete it, then whenever you leave a map, you'll lose your keys. Given this is a hub-based episode, you're gonna run into softlocks all the time otherwise. Props to Jared Will for helping me out with this one. Anyway, on to the review proper. Unloved starts simple. You're locked in your bedroom and it's dark. All the doors are locked, but you do have these odd switches strewn about the place. But after you hit the second one, there's no coming back. Unloved is dark and oppressive from the title screen, but things get pretty harrowing once you enter the first map, the basement's basement. The dynamic lights highlight piles of gore, the Doom monsters add a bit of spice to the vanilla-minded combat, and the various colored lighting and fog effects do help with making this feel less like Doom you know and more like something else that might have eventually evolved from it before going in its own direction. I think it's the mix of Hexen, Blood, Quake, and Doom textures. There's definitely a few more textures here that might be custom, but by and large you're going to be seeing well-calibrated mixes of these texture sets. And you know what? They flow together quite well for being from games from different engines. One interesting thing about Unloved is that it plays less like your typical Doom episode, as it makes use of a hub system instead of having distinct stages. This means you'll eventually find doors you can open as the key or action required to unlock it won't be found in that particular section of the map, instead requiring you to go to another place to drive progression forward. I should say I've never actually finished playing through Unloved, so I can't comment on its difficulty too much. I just think it's important to stress you should play this on one skill less than your usual, unless you're into harder maps. Some of the fights can possibly compare to old Thunder in scale and difficulty, which isn't helped much by the fact you're going up against custom monsters which aren't part of the bestiary. Nevertheless, the atmosphere pulls me in and I do want to finish playing it sooner rather than later. Next year, perhaps. The maps, from what I've seen, aren't too difficult to navigate and usually you'll pop out of them with a good grasp of where you are in the house. There's some light puzzle solving here and there, nothing too complicated, though eventually you will meet resistance, be it in combat or in the exploration. Nothing to it. Keep going and pay attention to your surroundings because hexing, this is not. I think the reason this is what made such a splash is because of the atmosphere. In some regards, it's not a stretch at all to say the atmosphere is doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. That's a good point, believe it or not, because some fights here will absolutely make you feel scorned at first. Anyway, I can't talk too much more about something I've never actually played in full, so I think it's best we move on, but don't worry, I'll definitely have more to say on Unloved when I do finish it. Let's go for something that runs on good old Doom 2 exe. We had enough fancy stuff going on in the past few entries, and my main goal here in this video is to have a little something for everyone, regardless of what they're into. So, if you're into the more classic side of Doom, chances are you're already familiar with Abscission. This megabot from 2022 was made by Snaxolotl and loosely retells the story of Doom 2, by loosely remaking its sturdy regular levels into darker, strange places that sometimes look nothing like what you're used to, or might come off as strangely familiar only to not play out quite as you remember it. The end result is a pretty scary wad with bits and pieces you might recognize. It doesn't try to outright kill you most of the time, but sometimes you'll just not want to get through these maps in spite of knowing that yes, you are alone. There are no more monsters left. It's just you and the chilling ambient soundtrack composed by Snaxolotl. And that's when you realize something terrible happened here. It's hard to quite tell what did, but something is so very wrong. Remember when I said there were no jump scares? No, that was a bit of a lie. After 7 minutes of mostly quiet music, Abscission's map 8, aptly titled Demon Core, opens up with blaring drums and what might just be the single most harrowing sound I've ever heard when playing Doom. That choir has gotten underneath my skin and died there. Thanks, Snacks, I hate it. Anyway, one of the downsides of doing reviews is that describing what it feels like to play these ones does no justice to the real deal. Abscission is simply put something you should experience for yourself instead of hearing someone else's thoughts on it. But then again, so is everything ever. If you're someone who particularly plays modded, this might be a good refresher on how Doom 2 is a lot of fun, even with no changes. So, Abscission has 32 maps and it's a very loose take on the vanilla maps. Well, what happened to the Wolfenstein 3D maps? I'm not sure I can accurately describe what happened to them, but Snacks has replaced the funny fourth wall break with a firm rejection of all that Doom stands for. I lack the ability to explain what's going on here, but basically the game has reached its limits and has broken it just enough to keep working. This bug happens when there are too many objects for the vanilla engine to keep track of collisions, so you can just walk through walls and monsters if you want. I don't know what the hell is going on in these forgotten spaces between, but for that reason I think this is one of the few cases where you may be better off skipping the secret levels. You are more than welcome to try playing them, but the thing is you need to use some specific settings to allow the bug to happen in the first place. In advanced ports such as GZDoom will flat out not let it occur, which makes trying to play them as intended a moot point. Snacks just put an exit switch right by the beginning for this reason. If it doesn't work, you can just leave whenever. I'm not much for remakes and such, but this and Snaxolotl's earlier Stickney installation are great picks in case you want to play some maps which aren't too far from the vanilla games, but are still bursting with creativity and occasionally dripping with dread. The Doom Reborn's project series is known for its vast array of themes, so it was hardly surprising when Doom 64 was selected for its 64th entry. This is another less advanced WAD, though unlike Abscission, this does require a limit removing ports to function. In short, just about every port that isn't Chocolate Doom. The AB64 of Silence was released in earlier 2024, storing 14 masks made using assets primarily from Doom 64 with some extra goodies sprinkled in for the sake of variety. Using assets which I believe come from Brutal Doom 64, as well as the then in-development Unseen Evil mod by Dr. PieSpy. In short, it's a nice way to experience Doom 64 without moving over to the actual game. There are plenty of differences still, but you can expect to hear some cool ambient sounds along the way. Seriously, am I the only one who's so consistently blown away by this kind of stuff? I've heard it countless times before in many different ones, to the point it's why I went out of the way to give Razor some of those too. Anyway, these 14 masks make for an ideal wind down and they won't take too long to finish. If there's something I deeply appreciate about the DVPs is they are often long enough to last a little while, but not long enough that I don't worry about needing to plan ahead in order to actually play them. I particularly like how faithful to the source material this entry is, and hey, for those who want to experience with mods, it shouldn't have any major issues aside from the Nightmare Imp which replaces from Immerse head. Yeah, it has a deactivate patch for that, and also the ambient sound effects. Another neat thing is this WAD's asset served as the base for Coneo's D64 graphics reskin, which essentially will make any WAD look like Doom 64. The entries in this section were all quite similar, so I figured it's best to lump them all together in a single entry instead of going at length about each of them. The important part is they're all going to function in every source pod out there. Let's start with horror movie Ray's Gothic skins. This one only has sprites and sounds, so the look of the mask isn't touched at all, but it does include its own custom palette, so there's the slightest bit of difference here. It's a solid reskin patch, as you can see by the older, less technological look of both your weapons and the monsters. I'm quite fond of the way the energy weapons are made into something more demonic, possibly eldritch, given the cells are now called Dreadstones. Up next, Doom but slightly more spooky. This one is going to make the game look quite dark, so it's just playing it in a dark room so you can see everything well. A lot of the faces from Gothic skins will be here as well, but some sprites come from Doom 4 Vanilla, Scaria's Demon Eclipse, and it also features textures from the Doom 3 for Doom 2 texture replacer. I think it's pretty neat, but the darkness derived from the palette swap does drag it down slightly in my eyes, and for how cool the Doom 3 textures look, I'm not sure I vibe with them entirely. Still, you can do much worse than this. Phobos Eternum, on the other hand, is a much more involved reskin. It replaces everything, and I do mean everything. Sprites, sounds, textures, and even music, borrowing from the PSX and Doom 64 soundtrack, but also shoring up the selection with some of Bouncy Tim's work. This one's resources are even more varied than the last two, as it uses some graphics from Team TNT's Eternal Doom. It's pretty crazy how well it all comes together. In certain lights, it makes Doom feel like some other game we never heard about. Well, that's a wrap. This video will be relatively rushed as I began writing for it on the 22nd and was way in over my head, as my first script was pretty terrible and trying to make such a video without a script to guide myself was an awful idea. I hope this video serves you well regardless of how you enjoy your time playing Doom, and at the very least makes you aware of one or two things you didn't know about until now. While I do want to make more videos like this, I don't think I'll make lengthy compilation style ones like this regularly. Going forward, I'd like to make some reviews of WADs and mods alike, as I don't often see folks do both. It's one or the other without a whole lot of intersecting. man, sorry, I'm kind of tired. Putting this video together was honestly a bit of a Herculean task for me. This is the first thing I do anything like this. Yeah, this is me going off the script a little. Oh man, yeah, it was rush. Yeah, no, it was rough, but it was worth it. Anyway, if you like what you saw, why not consider subscribing? I usually do. I mostly just sort of play Doom mods and such, but sometimes I do play some other games. You may also know me because I do weapon showcases for Doom mods, but I've been itching to get out of my comfort zone and do something different, like this really long and very produced, at least on my standards, video. Yeah, sorry for all the deep rants and sides and such, like, yeah, I've just been narrating this, like, non-stop, and I'm just kind of tired, really. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and remember to enjoy Halloween. I don't really do holidays on my channel, but come on, it's Spooktober. Everyone can have fun today. See you around.